Hey there, everybody. Robert Taylor with Wonderscape Creations, continuing on with another glorious episode for our crafting system involving Narrative Pro. For those of you who haven't been following along, make sure you do the first episode as it gets all the data structure information ready. That way, when we are creating the code now within the component, everything works as intended. So we are going to be getting all of the code laid out in the component. Um, all of the important code for the component is on the component. Unfortunately, there is some stuff that has to be done. Well, it doesn't have to be done, but it's easier to do on the widget itself. In future iterations, I may move some of that information from the widgets to the component if it seems like it would be easier. Um, haven't decided yet. I just know that it works beautifully. So I haven't made any changes to that. However, most of the logical work is done in the crafting system. It's getting information for the widget itself that is done on the widget. So, um, without further ado, let's go ahead and get our crafting component all set up for future episodes when we create our UI stuff. So, there's a couple of things that we need to make before we jump into the component itself because they are things that we will be needing. The first thing being what's called a view model. It is a decision that I've decided to utilize what is called a UMG view model. It is in beta right now. It's an Unreal Engine plugin. Come in here, UMG view model. Wasn't sure if I needed the preview, so I turned it on anyways. Um, but you definitely need the UMG view model right here selected, so I have. Um, for those of you who don't know what it is, I'll give you a brief explanation, but I do encourage you to go and Google UE5 UMG view model and read up on it. I do feel that it is missing some information simply because it's written from the developer standpoint, not a new to using the plugin standpoint. But I did figure out quite a bit with my own testings and whatnot. So it is what we are using. So UMG view model is the middleman. It holds all the information that's going to the UI. So essentially, our component needs to be aware of this view model. The widget needs to be aware of the view model. But now the components and the widget don't need to be necessarily strictly aware of each other. Strictly speaking, anyways. This also makes it to where you don't have to worry about if you're doing multiplayer. You don't have to worry about making sure you get the right reference. Now, obviously, in widget, it's a little easier. You can get owning player or controller, whatever it is, to do things that way. That's very obviously what you can do. But you will run into instances where that's not possible, and you would be stuck with a get player, and then you'll have that zero to the left of the node, indicating that it's going to get the very first player. So I bypass that altogether, and I ultimately just find view models to be a lot easier to use. If you don't want to use them, that's fine. I do encourage you to follow along until the end, anyways, and then you can remove it with the traditional method. Just know that I don't think these are going away, and that they will become the norm very soon because they went to beta really fast. So once you have those turned on and you've restarted the plugin, we are first going to create a view model. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to name it UI. Then in here, I'm going to create another new folder. I'm going to call it view models. We're going to come in here and create blueprint. And I think it's VMMV. No, MVVM. There we go. MVVM view model base is what we want. And I'm going to call this VM for view model underscore crafting. And then we're going to open this up. So you'll see on the face of it that things look very much the same, very similar. Um, just you don't see anything in the details. That's fine. First thing we will do is we're going to create two variables. The first one will be the crafting component. Then we will go ahead and find our AC crafting underscore WC. The next thing we are going to want is create our research points. This one will be an integer. And we're going to come over here to, you don't have to come over to the right, but I want to show you. Field notify. If we check mark it, you'll see that this bell is now white. So that's what we're going to do. That way, whenever this gets updated here in the view model, it'll update it in all the widgets where it's being used. For the crafting component, we don't want this accessed. Not 100% sure why, but there were times that whenever I'd open the UI that the whole project would crash. And it would only be when I was using this, but not every single time. Now, once it did eventually crash, it crashed every time after that, but the first few times it never did. So we have to create a function that does the notify. And there's a couple of reasons why we're doing that, but let's go ahead and first create it. Get crafting component. The first thing we need to have here is a return node. And we will get the crafting component and plug this in. Now you'll notice here when we come here to the crafting component, the field notify, we can't use it. There's a couple things that are absolutely fundamentally required in order to turn this into a notify. The first thing is we need this to be pure. It's just a getter. So we don't need it to run on any executive pin. The next thing, we need to come down here to the advanced and mark it as const. So nothing is going to change. Obviously things change, but it's just going to get the component for us. That way, when things do actually change, we have access to the component and we can find that information quickly. And now, it's a field notify. This will all make more sense once we get into the widgets, but we need this created for creating it in the component. So now we're going to come in here. The next thing we actually need to create before we do anything else, because we're going to need it in the code, is we need to create our interface. So let's hop back into our crafting folder. We come into blueprints, interface, BPI underscore F2. BPI underscore crafting system underscore WC for me. You can do whatever you want. And for now, we only need one function. Get crafting data asset. Now, strictly speaking, this isn't needed, but there may be times when we at Wonderscape Creations need to get it this specific way. And for that, this is how we choose to do it. But specifically within the crafting component itself, it's not needed, and I will explain that in detail once we get there. So now we'll go ahead and get an output. This will be of type, where is it? Recipe data asset. Recipe. There we go. Compile and save. Now, lastly, we now need to go into that data asset that we created. There we go. And we need to come in here to class settings. Let me just make this bigger. Look for the crafting system. Get data asset. Reference to self. And boom, good to go. Now, we can go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get started. Very first thing we want to do in the crafting system component itself is we need to construct something. We will, what's it called? I think it's called construct object from class. Touch that into the begin play. The outer we're going to apply to self. We're going to get a reference to self. And in here, we are going to get our view model that we made. The next thing we will want to do is pull out of here, promote to variable, name it view model. Now, this doesn't do anything. We've constructed it, but there's no instance of it in the world yet. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to pull out of the view model and add view model. Oh, right. We can't pull out of here to do it. We need to get a subsystem. So let's go ahead and get a view model. Where's the subsystem? VM sub. That's why. We need to get the game subsystem. Yeah, see, it shows view model game subsystem. I don't know why they can't keep the names consistent. But then we want to get view model collection. Now, it's important to note that this is just one of 4 ways of getting everything set up for the view models. And this is the only way that was clear enough for me able to piece together to create. If anyone else knows more about view models and how to set them up in the other ways, that would be fantastic, but it's strictly not necessary. Now, once we're in here, we're going to do add view model instance. So by doing this, this view model is automatically being created once this crafting system is started and will always be active. Yes, it's a little less performant, but you've seen how little data it holds. It shouldn't be much of an issue. Could be, but it shouldn't be. Next thing we will want to do is split this struct. And we want to get our crafting Wonderscape creations, and we want to name it. So I'm going to call it crafting VM. This needs to be unique. You can't have a bunch of them with the same name. This needs to be unique. Now I could easily create this in the component, in the widget once we activate it. That way it's only there when we activate it, because then we can turn it off anyways. This is how I choose to do it. If you want to make it slightly more performant, you can always figure that part out yourself. Find myself rambling a lot today. I apologize. Now then, with that done, we need to create a couple of functions before we can do anything else. But before that, I want to create a variable that we need. A few variables, really. The first one being, we'll just name this research points. We want this to be an integer. This one I mark as private. Wonderscape creations. I'm changing the category right now. Private. Because there's some things you just don't want to be seen, but we will be needing it. That's why we'll make a getter. Then we also want the inventory reference. We'll make this narrative inventory. This too, we're going to mark as private. It's just right there. All right. So the first function we will make, we will call get view model. We need the return node. We will get our private view model because now it's protected. Nothing can happen to it. And return it. That way, if anyone needs the information, they can get the information. They just can't change the view model because we don't need that. Next, we will get the inventory component. Get inventory component. From here, we will get an input here. Actually, let's do this the lazy way. We'll get our inventory reference. We'll set our inventory reference just like this. And then before we do that, we're going to get an isValid function. Oh, whoa, that's new. Let's do it from this way. We need the macro. That's what the question mark is. There we go. And then if it is valid, we will set it. Obviously, we want to return no matter what. I'm terrible at doing returns, so there may be some that don't show up. It's not strictly necessary. It's more of a cleanliness thing. The next thing we need is get inventory. Not get inventory component, get inventory. And the reason we need that is this specifically is to get the inventory component from the owner of this of the crafting component. So yes, you're going to want this attached to wherever your inventory component is at. It needs to know where it's at. This next one is so that if we need access to the inventory component from wherever we're at, we will be able to do so. So get inventory. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Return node. Let's get our reference. Bang. Now this is going to be pure. There we go. With that, so that there is no miscommunication, I have an actual description for the get inventory component that I'm going to copy and paste in here for you guys. Essentially what it says is get the inventory from source, and then in parentheses use get inventory to use outside of crafting component. That way it's clear, concise, and everyone understands. To the best of their ability anyways. Now, after we've done that, we need to create a function called find recipe. So let's go ahead and create that. find recipe. Now then, we need the input to be, sorry, let me grab my notes here. Yes. S recipe WC. Recipe. Now we need to get our crafting categories. Pull out of here and do a for each loop. Then we're going to break this. Pull out of here to get a for each loop. At which point we then need to break this. Come on. There we go. For the recipes, to do one more for each loop. Now then, I wish there was an easier way to get all of this. In the future, I may change these, not this array. I may change this array too, but I may change these to a map instead. That may speed lookups. It may speed up the lookup speed for finding these recipes, but I haven't decided yet. It's certainly a possibility for those that would like it. Anyways, we will then come over here. We're going to set this to a local variable called local recipe. And the V period shows that it's a local variable. The next thing we want to do is get recipe. F means it comes from the function. And if there's no letter, then it's just a normal variable. As you can see right here, no letter. The next thing we need to do is break and break. We need to get this recipe equal. We'll hide the pins that aren't being used. Hold down the B for a branch. Whoops, not what I wanted you to do. Sorry, I'm organizing here a bit. And then if true, we want it to return. We will get our local recipe, return the local recipe. And I'm going to change this to found recipe. There we go. Now then, sorry, 1 second, my dogs are barking. All right, sorry about that. So the next function we need to make is the is recipe locked. This will be very important for the widgets. That way we can control the functionality, a lot of the functionalities of the widgets, what shows up when they're locked and whatnot. So we'll name this is recipe locked. And the first thing we're going to want as an input, perfect, recipe. Luckily, if you've been following along, it should be S recipe as should automatically populate there. And we will pull out of here, find recipe. The recipe that we, the function that we just made. Then we will break it. We'll pull out the discovery, break it. And then we are going to pull out of here, get a return node, place that into the return node, And finally, to clean things up, hide the unconnected pins so it's easy to read. All right, there's that function. The next one we are going to do is called update research points. This one is a very valuable one. Now, remember, if you're going to actually just do recipes, do it the old-fashioned way, then you won't have research points, so this technically isn't necessary. But again, I would encourage you to modify this system after you have access to the completed version. Now then we're going to hit the plus sign. This will be turned into an integer. Research points. We will now hit a plus sign here. Then we are going to get our view model. Pull out of here, search for the research points so we can set it. You'll see set with broadcast. Last thing we need to do is to set our research points that are here in the component. And then we can return. Now, this is important. If you don't set this with broadcast right here, then it's not going to update the UI right away dynamically. Obviously, if you were to close the UI, then reopen it and go back to the crafting window, then research would show up correctly. Likewise, if you don't update this as well at the same time, then this will just always stay at 10. So just make sure that you have these connected properly. Next is updating crafting categories. Now, this is a bit of a lengthy process, and unfortunately, it is necessary in order to update everything within the crafting category itself when you unlock a recipe. And we have to do it this way because of the frustrating bug with the data assets with the bool for checking if it is discovered. It is what it is. So let's go ahead and get started with this function specifically. And once we're done with this function, we will end this episode and finish up getting all the functions and everything set up in the next one. So this one, like I said, is called Update Crafting Categories. We need this to be a recipe. As recipe. There we go. Now we need to get our crafting category and do a for each loop. Excuse me. From here, we need to promote to local variable. Name this local category index. The next thing we need to do, break the array. One second here. Sorry about that. Next thing we need to do is promote this to a local variable called local cat name. You can fully spell out category if you want to. I don't. I'm going to hide that. Lastly, let's unhide that because I need it. Promote to local variable, local sub cat array. And we will do a for each loop again. And we'll do the process over again. Local variable, local sub category index. Break this. Local sub cat name. Did this need to be? Yes, it did. Simply because it's easier at this point. Promote to local variable. Local recipe array. We'll set that up. For each loop. Now with that part out of the way, what we want to do is break, and we will get recipe from the function itself. Do break as well. Equals. Hide the unconnected pins. B for branch. Excuse me. And if it's true, we now need to start setting some arrays. So first, let's get our recipe here. We'll break it, just like that. Then we're also going to break that. At which point we will get the local recipe arrays. We're going to set array element. It needs to be on the true right there. We need to make. Make sure you size to fit in the set array element, or things are just not going to work. Make. And we want to now plug in the recipes. Mark this as is discovered. Crafting cost goes into crafting cost. Recipe goes into recipe. We'll push these up a bit so that it's easier to see. And now it's being made. But wait, we can't stop there, because this is a local variable. The last thing we need to do is to get the subcategory index. Just like that. Oh, whoops. Not the subcategory index. Sorry. Almost broke something there. I just got a string here. Plug that in right there. Just like that. Nice and lazy. Now, we need another set array element. So let's go ahead and get the subcategory array. Set array element. We will get the subcategory index and the item we will make. Of our new subcategory recipes. And the subcategory name. And one last time, This time getting our crafting categories, the one that's not local. Set array element. Make size to fit, size to fit. Something that I just realized. Give me a second to wrap my head around it real quick. Never mind, it was my brain playing tricks on me. Let's keep on going. We'll mark that, and we will get our local category name. And finally, get the local category index and return. So now we've updated this bool to be set that way, to be set to true. As you can see, it's quite a lengthy process. Categories, it'll never be relocked. Once you've spent points, you've spent points. I'm not going to play that game because the players can be able to have as many points as they need. They just have to find the scrolls or buy them from a vendor. It's not a big deal to me. But there we go. All set up and ready to go. Like I said, quite lengthy. First, we're breaking into everything of the crafting category to find the specific recipe that we need. And then we are rebuilding the crafting category variable back up. All right, so thank you guys so much for watching. I know it was lengthy. I don't want this to be in another 30 to 40 minutes. So we're going to end this episode here, and we will finish getting the work done and the crafting components in the next episode. Thanks for watching.